Hey, so why are you making so many Lamy videos? I don't know, I guess Lamy just has a lot going on. They've got special edition pens coming out, special edition inks, they just got bought by a bigger company, and then there's that whole dark lilac drama. Don't worry, I'm not making a video about that. Okay, that's fair, but other companies have cool things going on too, like TWSBI. They just came out with the Dark Sapphire Eco, and Kaweco, they just came out with the Apricot Pearl Sport. Don't you care about any of that stuff? No, of course I care. Those pens are gorgeous. It's just that TWSBI and Kaweco pens have let me down too many times. Both of my TWSBI Ecos are cracked, and both of the Kaweco Sports I've used had flow issues. Oh, so you've never had any problems with your Lamy Safaris? What about that extra fine nib crisis of 2017? Well, yeah, there was that, but Goulet Pen sent me a replacement. Yeah, and it was almost as bad as the first one. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. But then I put a fine nib on it and I've never looked back. It's been great. Okay, fine. But the question remains, why do you have to keep making Lamy videos? There are other cool pen companies out there. What about Pilot? They're cool. True. I actually have a Pilot Kakuno video coming down the pipeline. Oh, really? Yeah. But first, can I make one more Lamy video? Fine. Hey, pen people, Brian here. We're doing an old-fashioned hands video today. Hopefully you don't mind that. But we're going to talk about Lamy Cliff and Lamy Blackberry. These are the new special edition inks from Lamy for 2024. They are really interesting. There's a lot going on that I really like, so I'm excited to share these with you. So I've got a writing sample I'm going to show you. We'll talk about the pros and cons of both of them. And yeah, let's dive into it. So here is my writing sample, and for the quotes that I pick, it's not necessarily supposed to be the most motivational, inspirational kind of thing. I just like to share something from my reading that I think is beautiful or interesting or important. So it's not really the stereotypical kind of motivational pep talk kind of stuff. This comes from Brian Doyle. I've quoted from him before on my channel. I really like him. He's got some great stuff. This comes from an essay called What It's Like to Be Hit by a Bullet. And as far as I know, Brian Doyle was never hit by a bullet, but this essay is about him talking to a veteran friend of his, and something, I think this was his veteran friend who said this, not Brian Doyle exactly. But anyway, so you can see here, the first few lines are darker and the last few lines are a bit lighter. So this first part is the Blackberry ink, and this is the Cliff ink. And I'll show you some color swatches and things to give you a better view of the ink in a second here. Let me just read this to you really quick. Sometimes I wish anyone who says anything whatsoever positive about war has to pay for his remark by getting hit with a bullet that's almost spent. He wouldn't get hurt too bad, but he'd be sore for a week, and he sure would be careful with words about wars ever after. You know what I'm saying? So, one thing that really captivates me is the idea of peace. How do you create peace? How do you maintain it? How do you diffuse non-peaceful situations? And so I really like how he kind of addresses the idea of war head on in a way that might make some people a little uncomfortable, because we like to justify our actions as human beings, but war is never a positive thing, right? Never ever. Even if you're fighting for self-defense, you wish you weren't. I don't know if there's much more to say than that, but I think thoughts like this are important because in our age where media is often very violent, our entertainment is very violent, I think it's important to remember that real violence is not cool. It never is, ever. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments, and it doesn't have to be necessarily about war, but what are some ways that you found work to diffuse tense situations, to de-escalate, all that kind of stuff? What do you do to promote peace in the world? I'm curious to know about that. Okay, now one thing I want to point out about this writing sample here, other than the fact that it's really sloppy, is that I used a dip pen, which is why the line width is inconsistent. Sometimes it's thick, sometimes it's thin. That's just what happens when you use a dip pen. So anyway, but let's dive in and take a closer look at these inks, starting with Lamy Cliff. So here's my ink swatch. I like to be a little messy with my ink swatches. I think it's more fun than using a brush. It's a really interesting dark blue. I really like it. It's very, very dark, but very, very saturated at the same time. And what I like about that is that even though it's so dark, it almost feels like it has a glow to it. Like it pops off the page, even though it's so dark. So it's subtle, but it has some personality to it that I really like. It has a decent dry time. I haven't timed it, but I also haven't had any problems with it. It seems decent to me. I've had no smudging, feathering, or bleeding, and there's some water resistance to it, as you can see here. I tend to leave some water droplets sitting on my swatches for quite some time, and nothing happened. I mean, well, yes, something happened. It did smear a bit. Some of the color lifted off and ran, but as you can see, the lines are still there very distinctly, and that's really nice because that means that if your writing gets wet, you'll still be able to read it. And now that I'm looking at this again, it's weird. It almost looks more purple. I'm pretty sure it's blue. I don't know, blue, purple. I feel like in Goulet Pen's video about this, they kind of had the same question, but I'm forgetting. Anyway, it's something like that, purpley blue or bluey purple, something. But anyway, there's sort of a sheen, as you can see. I think that's mainly because of the paper I'm using for this swatching card, and also just the fact that I put so much down. I haven't noticed any sheen as I've been writing with this ink. It's not really a high sheening ink, especially compared to the Blackberry ink that we'll look at here in a second. Okay, cons on this ink. I honestly can't think of any. It's a great ink. I really like it. If you like the color, I can highly recommend it without any strong reservations of any kind. Okay, let's move on to Lamy Blackberry. This one is very interesting, as you might be able to tell here. And if you're getting value out of this video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that's a really easy way for you to support my channel and help it grow. I really appreciate all of your support. So, as you can see, there is a ton of sheen on this ink. It's so crazy. In fact, the way it dried is almost three-dimensional. It's almost kind of goopy. You can feel where it's thick on the paper, almost like paint. It doesn't behave like paint in your pen, don't worry. I mean, it feels very well behaved. I haven't had any hard starts or drying out, whatever, and just tons of sheen. It looks kind of gold to me. Maybe it's more green. I don't know. I'm not the most sensitive when it comes to colors. And I've had no feathering or bleeding with this ink either, which is nice. And it also has some water resistance to it. As you can see here, I feel like they're fairly comparable, though in practice, when I've been writing with this, I feel like I did actually get something wet by accident, and it was a little harder to read just because there was a lot of smeared ink on top of those lines, but I feel like if I were to actually wash off those smears, that I would still be able to see the lines underneath. So as far as I can tell, they are similarly water resistant. Now, one potential con of this ink, I don't know, it's not really a con, I think, but it might be a little too dark if you're looking for a nice strong purple. It is extremely dark. I don't know if I could tell the difference between a black ink and this Lamy Blackberry ink, which is purple, if I were to see them written on the page. Again, I'm not the most sensitive when it comes to differences in color. I'm not colorblind, I see all the colors, but just some of the finer shades, especially when they get dark, they're just kind of hard for me to distinguish. So it is purple, but extremely dark. I guess maybe that's why they call it Blackberry. It's almost like the purple equivalent of a blue-black ink. The purple is there, but it's very subtle and it's very dark. So that might be a pro for some people. That might be exactly what you're looking for. I don't know. But if you're looking for just like a really peppy purple, probably not this ink, except that sheen. That sheen is very peppy. So maybe it is your ink. I don't know. The only other con is that I have noticed, at least on Rhodia paper, some smudging in my notebook when I write with this. Not as I write, it's afterward. When I go back to check on what I've written, it seems like it's kind of been rubbed around by the other page just a little bit. I'm not too familiar with sheening inks, but I feel like that's a common issue with sheening inks. The couple that I've used smudged pretty badly. This actually doesn't smudge as badly as other ones I've used. I feel like from my experience with sheening inks, this is a pretty well behaved one, but there still might be some minor smudging, so just keep that in mind. Okay, just a couple more pros, some really good things. Again, these are really well behaved inks, not too wet, not too dry. They just are pleasant to write with. They're pretty. I really like them, and they're a really good price. It's 12 US dollars for a bottle. So to sum this up, if you like the colors, then I can wholeheartedly recommend these inks. They're great. If you have any questions about them, let me know, and I'll talk to you later. Do you think I should make a dark lilac video? No, you don't even have those inks. Okay, yeah, no, you're right.